Good morning. I'm Don Ragona with the Native American Rights Fund. I'm the Director of Development in House Counsel, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the start of today's discussions and questions and answers from the candidates. I'd like to introduce, and have the great pleasure of introducing Dr. Val Almonord, and you're running for District 3 for the House. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it. Well, let me tell you a little bit about me before I answer your question. I was born in Haiti. I immigrated to United States about 54 years ago. I went to high school while working in a factory line, and college and medical school, and student loan and college work study. After I graduated from medical school and stopped going in private practice where I can make a lot more money, I decided to work for the government, to work on the underserved area, then military, and I spent my whole professional life, 35 years, working for the federal government. And I retired in 2018. After I retired, I'll take a close look what especially our medical system functioning. We have the greatest medical system in the world, the best care anywhere in the world, but it's not available to everyone. If you can afford it, it's the best care. If you cannot afford it, you don't have the best care. And I think I can do something about it because not only I'm a physician, but also I have a master in healthcare administration. I know how it works, I know how it's supposed to work, and I know how I can help make it work better. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring. And also, there are other issues. I think we don't pay much attention to them, but we should pay a lot more attention to them. Like housing, for example, for the poor. A lot of people living in substandard housing. They should be, that should be addressed by the federal government and by the state government. Okay, and I know, especially in native land, there are a lot of substandard housing. There's no reason for it. It should be get help, to help them. And now you know about student loan. Student loan. Joe Biden, the President Biden, try his best to help the student loan by giving you $10,000, $20,000. That's great, but that's not a complete solution, because most students graduate with $50,000, $60,000 loan. So they will need some help. We need to give them a path to repay that money without putting a chain around their head. This is them. You got more time or what?
First, thank you. I appreciate that, and our audience appreciates all the background information, Doctor. And thank you for stepping up and keeping this process going.
Welcome.
Very, very important, and we appreciate that. What I'd like to do a little bit, if we could, is talk about, since you are running for Congress, you are going to be in all likelihood coming across legislation that deals with Indian country and the specific issues that affect Indian country and Indian people. And if I may, I and my fellow panelists would like to ask some questions about how you feel about certain key issues that are affecting our nations today, and hear your thoughts on that, if we may.
Well, I don't pretend to be an expert on Indian issues, but any issues come cross my desk to face of me, I will take a hard look at it to see how I can address it.
Oh, I do appreciate that. Let me get a little bit more specific. There's an issue right now that is affecting Indian country, and it's being challenged in the Supreme Court in November, and that's the Indian Child Welfare Act, and it's essentially the adoption of Indian children. It's the protection of Indian children from being adopted out of their tribes and away from their families. If you look at the statistics about how that is so negatively impactful on our Indian children, on them individually, and on our tribal nations, because Indian kids are our greatest resource, and if we lose them, we lose future generations of nation builders. So let me give you a little bit of background, if I may, on ICWA. The Indian Child Welfare Act, or ICWA, it was enacted in 1978 in response to a crisis affecting American Indian and Alaskan Native children, families, and tribes. Studies revealed that large numbers of Native children were being separated from their parents, extended families, their communities by state child welfare and private adoption agencies. In fact, research found that 25 to 35% of all Native children were being removed. And of these, 85% were placed outside of the families and communities, even when fit and willing relatives were available. So at the time, not only was ICWA vitally needed, but it was drafted to address some of the most long-standing and egregious removal practices, specifically targeting Native children. Among its added protections for Native children, ICWA requires caseworkers to make several considerations when handling an ICWA case, including providing active efforts to the family, identifying a placement that fits under the ICWA preference provisions, notifying the child's tribe and the child's parents of the child custody proceeding, and working actively to involve the child's tribe and the child's parents in the proceedings. Because these added protections address not only specific systems abuses directed at Native children, but also their unique political status and cultural considerations. ICWA has been labeled the gold standard of child welfare policy by experts and national leading child advocacy organizations far beyond Indian country. So it truly is a model. So, Doctor, let me ask you, right now, there's a case, as I said earlier, pending before the Supreme Court that will challenge the Indian Child Welfare Act. Should the unthinkable happen and ICWA is found to be invalid, it would have great far-reaching consequences that would be felt for generations, namely weakening the protections for Native children and thus clearing the way for bad actors to grow their control of Native land, Native industry, and Native futures. So would you consider introducing or co-sponsoring legislation to correct what would be that grave error by the court should they decide that ICWA is no longer valid?
Thank you for the question. As you say, if the unthinkable happened, well, I don't know if it should be any more unthinkable, because what happened last year make everybody believe it's possible. Yes, I will introduce, sponsor, not co-sponsor, sponsor a bill. Unless somebody has beat me to it, I will sponsor a bill to protect the Indian children. Because as a sovereign nation, I don't think any child should be moved out of your nation without express permission of the leaders and their parents.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. And I know our audience appreciates that as well. I'd like to turn the next question over to Vonnie McCormick, and I'll let Vonnie introduce herself.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Vonnie McCormick, Principal Chief of the Lower Muskogee Creek Tribe.
Hello, Chief.
This next question is dear to my heart, and it is about Violence Against Women's Act. It's created and supported comprehensive, cost-effective response to domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. Since its enactment in 1994, VIWA programs administered by the United States Department of Justice and Health and Human Services have dramatically improved federal, tribal, state, and local responses to this crime. The VERA Reauthorization Act of 2022 was included in the fiscal year 2022 Ombudsman spending packet against and signed by President Joseph R. Biden on March 15, 2022. This bipartisan act reauthorized, including groundbreaking provisions to strengthen and modernize the law. The law provides survivors the thousands of local programs that serving them and communities with much needed resources for housing, legal assistance, alternative to criminal response, and preventing, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm having trouble seeing this morning, preventing programs.
That's okay.
It's also included new economic justice provisions and bolsters access for survivors of all gender by strengthening non-discriminating laws and creating the LGBTQ service program. The laws also restores tribal jurisdictions, allows tribes to hold non-native predators accountable, improve assisting housing protection, and increase access to emergency and short-term housing, and create a dedicated investment in culturally responsive services provided to ensure survivors of color or support. The question would be, do you believe that these life-saving services should be pre-authorized and federal funding used to address and prevent domestic violence?
Yes, I believe that's something that should be authorized every year on a regular basis, just like funding for anything else.
Thank you.
Erica, if I can turn to you for the third question.
Thank you, Don. My name is Erica. I'm with Four Directions Native Vote. Good morning, Dr. Almonord. Thank you for addressing issues regarding Native youth, Native women. And now I'm going to ask you a question about Native American voting rights. The Help America Vote Act of 2002 was passed in the United States Congress to make sweeping reforms to the nation's voting process. HAVA, otherwise known as HAVA, addresses improvements to voting systems and voter access that were identified following the 2000 election. One of the provisions of the Help America Vote Act allows for the use of funds to be used to improve voter engagement, which is an issue across Indian country. In the state of South Dakota, for example, the Help America Vote Act is used to help counties pay for early in-person satellite offices that can be used for dropping ballot boxes. If elected, would you support the funding of the Help America Vote Act?
Thank you for the question. If you have an act or a law, you can pass it, but if you don't give appropriate money to implement it, it means nothing. You cannot use it. Yes, you will need money to implement the voting act to make sure that people can use it. Well, as I was coming here, I found this little sticker there. You see, let me look at it again. Every native vote count. And I believe every native vote count. But your vote maybe not count for one. You can multiply it by calling your friends or your supporters, say, ask them to vote the way you voted. That means the one vote you cast, you can multiply it to many votes by asking your supporter and friend to vote the way you voted.
Thank you for supporting and acknowledging the power of the Native vote. Thank you, Doctor.
You're very welcome.
Doctor, I want to thank you for coming today and visiting with us and answering our questions. So much appreciated. Would you like to make any closing remarks before we go?
I'd like to thank you for inviting me, for coming to address you. I really appreciate it. And in Georgia, as you know, there are many obstacles created mostly for minorities, just like you, the black and the have-nots, especially in the rural area. You know, mailbox have fewer parts, they cannot move them around. It's not by accident. They designed it to make sure to suppress our vote. I mean, when I say our vote, I mean the minority vote. And I want to thank you because you are working hard to try to redress that. But I can tell you, if the Democrats get elected, we will reverse the suppression law. Again, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Doctor, and best of luck to you in the upcoming election. On behalf of Four Directions, our sponsors, NCAI, the Native American Rights Fund, Native Forward, thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. Principal Chief McCormick, Erica, thank you for sitting on the panel and spending our time with Dr. Almonord. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.